Welcome to Importer Insight, where we share real stories about the people involved in the global import community. I'm your host, Amanda Hornay, and today I have with me an infamous name in the fresh produce industry, Paul Manfre, the Red Pepper King. Hey, Paul.
Hi, how are you, Amanda?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know who you are. I've been in the fresh produce industry for 15 years. You're very well known. But for the people that are not, can you share with us how you started as an importer or how you got
Well,
involved in imports?
to tell the whole story, I've been in this business of 50 years now. Uh,
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, and I started selling produce on a street corner in New York City. That's how it started, literally with a push cart. And even before that, before the push cart, my father my father was looking to for a career change, and he got into the produce business like totally by accident. His friend opened up a store, and he started working. And then they said, you can make a lot of money peddling fruit.
Yeah.
You know, so he went down to Chinatown in New York City, and they started peddling fruit. And then he found a spot in the Mets parking garage. Now, anybody from New York City from that 30 or 40, the Mets parking garage today is the New York Times building. Okay. But back then it was a parking garage in the heart of the fashion district. And all the great designers of that day parked their car in that garage. Calvin Klein, Gloria von Furstenberg, the Jordache brothers, whoever was big in fashion back then, parked in that garage. And our fruit store was basically 4 parking spots that we set up with milk boxes and 4x8 sheets of plywood. And that is right down the block from the Port Authority bus terminal, which hundreds of thousands of people passed our stand every day to get to the Port Authority to take their bus home to New Jersey. So, yeah, so what my father started with, like putting 20 grapes in the back of a car and selling like 2 or 3 different items, turned into selling 2 truckloads of produce a day, basically in 4 or 5 hours, as people walk by and pass. And from that, then I started with the push carts up on Broadway and 7th Avenue, and that's how I originally got into the produce business. And I have literally done everything there is to do in this business, from selling produce on a street corner, from wholesaling from trucks, to just going around like buying cheap and going to stores and restaurants. I lived in Costa Rica growing strawberries. I lived in Mexico. I went to school in India. I've lived and now for the past 30 years, it's basically been bringing stuff from Mexico into the United States and then distributing it across the United States.
Amazing. Wow. That's an amazing story. You've
Yeah.
done it all.
Yeah, I literally have done it all. And what's really great about doing it all is when someone says, "Oh, you can't do it," or "That's not how it's done." If you've done it all, you can say, "Well, this is how it's done," right?
Right.
This is how we used to do it. Or, there's yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I wouldn't trade my experience for anything.
Great. Yeah. So if you had to do it all over again, what would you do? What would you do differently?
I would have finished medical school.
Did you go to medical school?
I went to school in India to become a doctor. I want to be a neurosurgeon. That's exactly
Really?
that's exactly what I had a brain operation when I was 10 years old, and yeah, that was it. I was hooked. I always wanted to be a doctor, and unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. But the good news is, a neurosurgeon pays about $1 million a year in malpractice insurance. I don't have to come up with the 20,000 a week for insurance anymore.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
and I
good
tell you the
thing.
truth, I don't know if I'd be a happy neurosurgeon, but people that know me say, "Paulie, when you going to retire?" And I usually tell them 3 days after I die, 5 days if the market's hot. So, yeah, I I still love this business, and now I get to because of social media. It started out just wanted to share my love of the produce business, and it turned out like it's been like another whole new chapter for me, kind of like sharing my experience with people like you, people much younger than you,
Yes.
and yeah, it's been great. I really, it's really been great.
I'm really grateful that we've had the chance to interact, and it is because of social media. That's how we met and started talking about the crossings and different things. So I'm really grateful you're here and that we actually got to talk and know each other a little bit. You've been in this business 50 years. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from being in the produce industry?
To me, I've been, I know what it's like to have a lot of money, and I literally know what it's like to have $3 left to my name. So what I take from that is you always have to stay hungry. You
Yes.
just have to always stay hungry in this business. Because I used to say, like when I was a buyer, like a terminal buyer and a retail buyer, through no fault of your own, you lose a customer. Maybe their kids don't want to be in the fruit business anymore, so they close their store, they close their business. That wasn't your fault, but sometimes I remember when I was young, I kind of like, well, I got to a point and I coasted. Well, if you're coasting in this business, you're losing ground. That's just so that's the one thing. I can remember when I took a little hiatus from this industry. I don't know, maybe 25 or 30 years ago. I
Um,
traded currency, and when I came back in, people said, "Oh, it's not the same." I always thought like it's not the same, but you just have to be willing to change with it. Or in my case, I've been ahead of it much of the time. So like I always had a knack of seeing things that were so obvious to me. I would say, how could you not see it? Right? Like to me, it was like the train coming down the track and people like, standing on the track. And I'm like, get out of the way. You know what I mean? Like there's signs in this business. So that's been a fortunate. I've made a reputation of calling markets weeks and months in advance. And I've been right a lot more than I've been wrong. And so people like, you know, it's a, I always say this. People call me from all over the world, like in my own family. I said, people call me from all over the world to ask my opinion, but in my house, I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? But yeah,
I
that's
never
what
tried your
I
hometown.
would say, like, keep an open mind, realize the changes in the industry. Listen, I come from a time before even the fax machine, before cell phones, before beepers, when everything was, the contract was writing on a piece of paper. You know what I mean? How much are pineapples, Amanda? 6. All right, give me 500 pineapples at 6. And we had very, very few discrepancies, and that turned into faxing because we used to, I don't know people realize we used to get a USDA inspection and then mail it. So it would get you get an inspection and then you'd mail it to California. You know what I mean? That guy would get it 7 or 8 days later. Yeah, you tell him, I got an inspection, but he'd get the inspection 7 or 8 days later. Then you had thermal paper faxing, right? At
Uh-huh.
that same time, we had beepers, so people would beep you, right? Then came the cell phone. Then, now you have computers, AI, you have a whole host of things. And, you know, from the technology standpoint, there's I don't know if people know this, but I work with a lot of technology companies trying to make it easier for a novice to have the kind of knowledge that I have by using technology, right? To talk about the crossing and the interrelationship with the crossing and the pricing and the demand. And you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of information out there, but anybody that's familiar with computing, they always have the adage, crap in and crap out. So my fear is some of the retail paradigm for big retail. I don't like the way they think. To me, that's crap in, and you're not going to get a good answer. So you're going to just do stupid moves a lot faster than you've done them before. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you mentioned AI, and I know you're working with a technology company. I believe it's called Grower Stock.
Well, I just I have NDAs with a few different companies, only because I give my ideas freely because
Yes.
you know they know how to make the app for it, and you know what I mean. But so I've given Tony some great ideas. I've given other companies, I just give them my ideas and say this is would really help buyers. I really like grower stock because they're not an ERP. There's all these ERP came. Just for a side note, none of these ERPs have the magic bullet. You know what I mean?
No.
Some do something, some do other things. But they all say we're the only ones, and that's a lot of BS. But what Tony does, no matter what ERP you have, it's tools to add on top of your ERP that can make you better at your business. And it's definitely time efficiency, paperwork efficiency. Like that's the kind of stuff where I think technology could lead us to make our jobs easier. Like
Yes.
I get a dashboard from them, and I can have all my suppliers on one email tell me everything they have all day. I could, if I want to, if I have like let's say 15 different suppliers for eggplant, and I want to do an ad on eggplant, I could say, I want 5 loads of eggplant this time period. What do you have? And that email goes to all my eggplant suppliers. So
Nice.
those,
Yeah.
those kind of tools make it very, very easy for even a novice to look like a professional. That's why, I give kudos to Grower Stock because they have great tools. And if someone else had, I talk to people at Pepper all the time, right? They have great tools for the restaurant industry. So
Uh-huh.
it's like, again, I'm not promoting anyone. I have no financial interest in any of these companies. But maybe that will change. I really don't know. But at this time I have nothing. I just think there's a lot of good technology out there. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of technology out there that people like, excuse me, they're blowing sunshine in the air. You know what I mean? And it really, it's just a story. You know what I mean? And it's not there's no basis in reality.
I would agree with you on that. I actually met with Tony um less than a year ago, I think, and we talked about his platform.
Yeah, they're adding stuff all the time.
Yeah,
Like
I'd love to
they're
see
really
the
adding.
new things he's added. So I'll touch base with him at a later point. But um, so let's see. I'm trying to look at technology is changing. The industry is changing so much. In 2026, we're going to have a lot of stricter regulations with the Food Safety Modernization Act. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's beneficial? How are you preparing for it?
You know, I really believe like you know. I'm going to probably make a lot of enemies by saying this. There's just things I believe in my core. I'll give you a perfect example. People in our industry talk about climate change. All right. I'm 68 years old. I can remember when Time magazine was going to say we're having a heat wave. So that was the thing. It was not we're going to have like, you know, we're having global frozen instead of global warming. So I've seen a lot of these things. I've seen people say that, the world is going to end, 20 years from now. Well, it's 40 years later and we're still in the same spot. So I rather deal in reality. And the reality is we have some serious problems in this country. Again, it's about telling a story what consumers or people want to hear, but it's really not absolutely the truth. Perfect example, organic produce. People would be surprised what you're allowed to have organic produce in this country compared to other countries. Organic produce in this country is not organic. You know what I mean? There's a list of things because it's in nature, you could put them in your, I just want to tell people arsenic comes in nature. Would you want that in your food? But there's a lot of regulations. Getting back to your point, there's a
Right.
lot of regulations, a lot of things about sustainability that is put on the grower and it's just adding cost on top of cost on top of cost. And then from the retail side, they want to be charge me less, charge me less, charge me less, so they can charge the consumer more and charge the consumer more and can charge. So that's what I'm saying. It's about a story, but the story's not complete. It's all tugging at the grower.
Yes.
It's all it's all put upon the grower to make stuff better and cheaper, but it costs more for the grower. And a lot of these regulations really they're not good. They're not good for us. I want to do a side note because this was part of just our recent history. Let me give you more to hate about me. I am a Trump supporter, okay? But 25% tariffs on fruits and vegetables is the stupidest thing you could ever do. And let me give you the reasons for it. In the produce business, it's a supply and demand business. So it could cost you $15 and you could sell it for 10, and you could be happy selling it for 10 because the next stop is 0. In the produce business, if you try to put 25% on top of a price that is not working, it just doesn't work. It will go back to the grower or the importer having to pay 25% more, but not being able to the retail is not going to pay 25% more. The consumer, we have a lack of demand in this country because people are living paycheck to paycheck. The consumer's not paying 25% more. And because we're in a perishable business, we have a time constraint on us. There's only a small window when our produce can be sold at the best possible price. After that, just so people know, the moment you pick produce, it starts dying. So you have a very short window to sell that product at again in that small window. When I was trading currency, I used to tell these people all the time. I had a few Harvard MBAs working for me, and I used to say, physical delivery of a perishable commodity. Price is going up, price is going down. While it's doing that, stuff is going rotten. You could sell that. You could sell anything.
That's true. Do you believe that if you can sell fruit or vegetables, you can sell anything?
Yes.
Yeah, I honestly, I think it was a negotiation tactic.
Yeah.
But
it threw our industry into a flux.
It
right?
did. It really did.
See, that's what people don't understand. We are the most resilient industry there is. If people had what we navigate, just go back 3 or 4 years during COVID.
Yes.
We were the only industry with shelves fully stocked. The only industry. We
kept going.
We operate on adversity. We operate on what's going wrong next. That's how we operate. We are very resilient. We know how to pivot in a moment. So, but when you throw that kind of stuff like, is it going to be 25%? Is it not going to be 25%? Is it going to be 25% for 2 days? And then what happens 3 days later when they take it off? So if you tell us the game rules, believe me, we'll play by the rules and we'll make everything fit. But if you throw that kind of monkey wrench into it that nobody could know the outcome, that's when it makes it difficult. And again, perishable commodity. We don't have too much time to sell our product.
Very true. Very true. They seem to be, I know customs brokers are reaching out and trying to get everybody ready just in case. And has that been your case, or?
Yeah, because we're now 3 weeks away from it happening again. It's very simple to take. Just make fresh produce an exclusion. Why would you, if you campaigned on you want to bring food costs down, why would you add 25% to food costs? I would 3 months ago, people were asking me about this, and I said, he will never do that. It would not make sense to add a tariff on produce. I was so surprised that he didn't cut out the exclusion right away. Hopefully the next time, it'll be in there.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be excluded, once we get to March 1st. We'll see.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That's really brought to light, imports in general. And I've been working on this for, over a year. And it was just like, man, I need to get started right away because this is so important. People don't realize how much we rely on imports
Yes.
and how vital the information that we use day to day is. Um, Other than, the systems that you use, what other systems do you use to kind of gauge supply and demand?
Well, the most important to me, which is it really has me it's a little worrisome this year, is the crossings.
Yeah.
Usually, I know on specific items, what's going to be a good market and what's going to be a bad market. And anybody that's followed me on my LinkedIn, I spoke about this, for the last couple of months. Typical green squash. The crossings this year, I'm just getting, there was a time, where they literally could not give away green squash. And that was only a few weeks ago. Then it spiked up a little bit. Now we're going back into that territory. But they couldn't give green squash away. I mean, people were not taking it price after sale. That's how depressed it was, because they was trying to sell it for $2, $3 FOB. Usually, to get to those prices in the past, you'd have to cross 70 to 100,000 a day. We were only in the 30,000 range. At 30,000 range, we should have been in a $10 to $12 FOB, and we were in a $2 FOB. So I actually said that maybe the demographics of green squash has changed. Like peaches for young people, not my generation loves peaches. The younger generation don't like peaches. Demographics has changed on peaches. I'm just wondering, maybe it's changed. And just to take it a step further, end of January, if any, again, my big thing is the week of the twos, the end of the month, the week of the twos.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
It's especially 2 weeks of the twos like we had in January,
Yes.
right? The last 2 weeks of the month.
Yeah.
Usually
it bled into February.
Right. And then usually, even though February is not a great month, usually the beginning of February is much better than the last 2 weeks. It wasn't this year.
No, it wasn't.
It's got my head spinning, because these are things that have worked for me for 30 years.
Right.
And it's in a little bit of a flux right now. In fact, I just wrote today, I just sent out my email of my podcast that I did yesterday. And the subject line was, where's the demand? You know what I mean? Like, there is no demand.
Yes.
It's really perplexing. Well, we'll figure it out, because I just told you, produce people are very resilient. We'll figure it out. And it may be we have to grow less squash. You know what I mean? Maybe we've got to grow more dragon fruit. Who knows? You know what I mean? But it's a thing right now. Demand is way off. And I could see it. I could see it from the consumer side, because we're still in an inflation economy. We're still in a paycheck to paycheck economy for the vast majority of people in this country.
Yes.
And I wrote an article several years ago called "Produce as a Luxury Item," and it's because you got to pay your mortgage, you got to pay your electric bill, you got to put gas in your car. Usually, the things you cut back on is your food bill.
Right.
And it becomes dollars per calorie, or calories per dollar, right? And
Right.
again, you're not just competing with the other produce store. You might be competing. The broccoli may be competing with the macaroni and cheese. The broccoli may be $2.99, and maybe the macaroni and cheese is 79 cents for a box. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
All
that feel good processed stuff is a lot cheaper than the fresh produce is normally. So, which is unfortunate. Do you think oversupply is an issue in some commodities?
Oh, you're gonna get me more haters now. I think the problem. I really believe the problem is large retail. Large retail is the conduit to most of the people for our industry, right? And a perfect example. When squash was $2 FOB, I actually did a podcast, and I said, let me know how much they're selling squash for in your area. A guy came back to me from California. It was $2.99 a pound. It was $2 FOB for 25 pounds of squash. So basically $5, $6 delivered to California. You want to double it, 12, and it brings back $75 at $2.99 a pound. So I get it. Like there were the way we did it back when I was selling produce on a street corner. We sold what was cheap and available, and it wasn't just me. It was 100 guys like me. So if something got cheap, 100 guys helped move that through the system. So it only stayed cheap for, let's say, a week. And then it was the next item and the next item, right? Today, when you don't have that follow through, something goes to $3 or $4 FOB, and retail chains want to be $1.99 a pound and bring back 600 and 800%. You're not bringing it through the system. You're not giving the consumers a bargain. So the stuff just languishes, and we get stuck in markets 3 and 4 weeks where they just can't move. And I really believe, that's why I'm a big fan of independence. Like a lot of my customers are either very large retail operations or chains with 15 to 25 stores. They get it. They are hooked up to their community. They know how to move stuff throughout. And, they're the ones. I have a friend that only used to open up stores if he was around a big chain store, because he would kick their butt 99% of the time, So, yeah, I think that's the biggest problem, is that we need retail to move our glut.
Right.
The short markets take care of themselves. When it's your time to make 60 and 70%, but you can have 4 or 5 items every week to give to consumers, and I could argue all day long, it's going to increase your bottom line because you're going to sell 5 times the amount you would have sold. I understand maybe now it's only at 30 or 40%, but you're going to sell 5 times the amount. It's going to add to your bottom line.
Yeah, I think we're at a point where we could probably react a lot quicker to things. And
Yes. Especially now.
Yeah.
Now, they used to say, "Oh, I got ads 3 weeks out." Who reads the newspaper anymore? You should, you know what I mean? Like
But
if you don't know how to
let's go.
if you don't know how to dollar cost average your inventory, you had stuff in the cooler. You have 100 of them. They cost 10. Now
Yeah.
you can just buy 100 more. They cost 5. Well, now you can sell those for $7.50. You know what I mean? But most retailers today, they will sell until that last box is sold. They will not adjust their retail. There's so many stupid things that they do. I was, again, crap in, crap out. If you start putting that in AI as the paradigm, all you're going to do is make stupid mistakes a lot faster.
True. Very, very true. We got to start reacting a little quicker and help move that glut along.
Yes.
You're totally right. So your focus is bell peppers.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like I do mostly the Mexican dry vegetables. Eggplants, cucumbers, right. all the hard squashes, the summer squashes. All the the chilies. But the main, I would say my biggest items are probably peppers of all kinds. All colors, kabocha squash, cucumbers and eggplants. Those are like my big items.
Those are your big items. Okay.
Yes.
What changes have you seen there across your career?
I'm gonna give you a big secret. I'm gonna give all the Mexican growers a big secret right now. Whatever is cheap this year, that's what you got to grow next year. Okay, because what Mexican growers do, like I'm gonna give you an example. Roma tomatoes, I guess the average over the cost of the deal last year was about $18, which is extremely high. Red peppers, I think we were 16 to 20 and higher FOB on a 15-pound all year. Cucumbers last year too. Those 3 items are all in the crapper this year because everybody grew them. And what's amazing is we didn't even hit our stride yet. Like green peppers and Roma tomatoes, the volume is coming a week or 2 from now, and we are at the bottom on these markets. And if something doesn't change on the demand side, we're going to be in a whole lot of hurting.
Yeah. Sounds like.
Yeah.
How do you plan for things like that? Like, what do you do to
listen, it's funny because I'm sure you've seen this. Every grower gives you a beautiful brochure in the beginning of the season. We're going to have 6 million packages, and we're going to have them in May, June, July, August. And I tell them every year, why are you wasting your money on this? It all comes down to, if you believe in God, what is he going to throw at you this year? Is it going to freeze you? Is it going to heat you? Is it going to rain on you? Is it going to snow on you? What is he going to do? And there's really no planning. You could have a plan, but you have to be ready to, go to plan B, C, D, E, F, Y, G. You know what I mean? Like, it's way down the road. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, we had red pepper markets. I've been selling red peppers for 35 years. We had red pepper markets last year that I've never, ever seen another red pepper market, and I probably have to live another 35 years to see it again. Like,
what was the price on red peppers? I don't.
Oh, it was. You just had a perfect storm. The 11 pounds, they got hit with a virus. There was rains and heavy rains going back to a year and a half ago in Coachella that went into, there were virus problems. It was just scenario after scenario after scenario of bad things. And, in our business, what's usually bad for somebody is usually really good for somebody else. Unfortunately, and also in our business, because we grow it so well, somebody has to do bad for the rest of us to do good. Because we are, because of contracts, you always want to have that supply for your contracts. So you're going to grow 20 or 30% more than your contracts to plan for those bad times. But if it's a good season with the perfect weather, well, what? You could have 40% more than you planned on, and that's when it comes in, to getting retail getting on the program to try to move that through the system.
So for everyone listening, in 2 weeks from now, they need to be buying more cucumbers. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, but what's
cucumber salad.
Yeah, what's amazing, Amanda? It's happened so many times. When you think something really bad happened, it's going to be really good, and it turns out to be the other way. And it turns out when you think something, oh my God, this market's going to go cheap, something happens and flips the script. So again, like you asked, what do you plan for? I never plan for. I just try to be a week ahead of everyone else. You know what I mean? Like, I usually have a reputation, like, I'm the first one down and the first one up. I'm the first one down because I want all the business. When I see that cloud coming, I want all the business. So I'm the first one down. It looks like I'm cheap, but in the end, I wasn't. And then the first one up because, I see that a short supply is coming, so I want to be ahead of that too.
Yeah, it definitely helps knowing what moves you want to make early down the road. I think Barry London, I'm sure you've met him before.
I know Barry London. I knew him when he was young.
Yeah.
And I knew Steve Hitchings' dad too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Wow. Well, he taught me about the 10-day rolling average and all that stuff. He taught me how to cut a line properly. I mean, just so many things, but how important volume plays in what we do every day, because that was the first thing we did when we walked into London, was like, look at what came in and how to, it taught you how to buy, what you needed to do that day. It makes so much of a difference, and hopefully the crossings will be more up to date or more, of a real time numbers
people,
soon.
Yeah. They don't realize that the USD. I tried to. That was I actually approached the USDA with grower stock, and actually told them this would be a great tool for you to do the crossings, because the crossings could be a 30-day lag. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, it's like 10 to 15 days.
Yeah,
sure.
Which is absolutely no good for us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
That train is out. That train left the station. But if they had up-to-date crossings, you could use all the technology to help build models, build pricing models. There's a lot. There's also tools. There's a lot of AI tools now that that could test soil temperatures, relative humidity, and they could actually be a predictor of the crop size and when you're going to harvest, which could be a great help because sometimes growers are off by so much. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
got volume. Oh, I got to have a lot of volume. Then you're selling. All of a sudden, they have no volume. Or no, I'm going to be light this week, and all of a sudden, 15 loads show up.
Seen advertisements for that. Is that agrometrics? Is that correct? Or
Again, because I have NDAs with a few
oh,
people, I've spoken about this with a few different companies, and I know it's out there, and it's
yeah,
just you know you need like with the USDA, you need good information to make the right prediction. Crossing 15 days later is not going to be a predictor of anything. You know what I mean? Like all you could do is confirm maybe what you thought 15 days ago, and you say, "Oh yeah, it did happen," but without timely information, uh, you know, it's it's really useless information.
correct. And I'm glad to I'm on. It's sad, but it's true. I'm glad to know it not only affected me as like a line
Yeah.
importer, but it affected you
Yeah.
and your
Yes.
commodities because
Yeah.
it changed. I think they changed. It was 732 commodities that they changed the crossings
Right.
reporting on, and
Right.
hopefully that'll be changed very soon. I know TIPA has been working on it really hard. For the last since 2020, we've been talking about this,
It
and hopefully
really should.
with the new administration, we'll get some changes in place
You,
soon.
if it was a private company that was getting paid for the information, it would have been fixed last week. You know what I
Right.
mean? But it's the government, and that's it's unfortunate that everything is a slow moving
Yes.
battleship.
Yes. Very true.
Yeah.
I guess another question I had for you is you've been doing this 50 years. If you had to give advice to someone who's new, just starting out, what would be that one thing that you'd tell them?
Start in retail. Now you got to say why.
Why?
Okay. When you start in retail, you will be proficient in assessing the value of a package. Retail. I've used this example before. Like, you want to teach somebody the produce business, right? Because at Topcats we're always looking for help. But okay, we're going to take in somebody that new that doesn't know anything about the produce business.
Yeah.
Okay, how many boxes are on a skid of red peppers? Now, you want to go down the list? We could go with 11 pounders, 90, 100, 110, 120. 15 pounders, 70, 77, 80. 25. And I just talk about one item boxes, and I didn't even talk about the sleeves and the stoplights, and that's just one thing. So getting back to retail, when you're in the store, you see all these things day in and day out. You know how many's on a skid, but more importantly, you know the value of a package. You know how to look. Wholesalers, they'll open up the box. Oh, look, a retailer has to sell everything in that box. So like this guy, he cheats a little. The top is all beautiful peppers, but in the bottom he puts all the twisted ones and everything. You know what I mean? Like you will know a package, and you will know what it's worth, and then you will know what it could be sold for at retail and wholesale. So I think retail is a perfect starting point. And I just
That makes a
believe,
lot of sense.
I just believe the more experience you have, if you're going to be a farmer, you know what I mean? Of course, you start on a farm, right? But I just think starting at the bottom, I've seen it in our own companies. People that know Stephanie Katzman, I think Stephanie Katzman is going to, change the produce industry. Stephanie Katzman started when I was selling berries at Katzman. She worked the floor like a porter. You know what I mean? She's a woman that knows everything that, you know what I mean? And I just think that makes you a good leader because,
Absolutely.
again, when somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, you can't do it that way," Stephanie can say, "Oh, I did it that way 30 years ago or 20 years ago," right? So
Yes.
I just think just a broad-based experience, just trying different things. But if I had to say, like, for someone like in my position, if you wanted, you're going to be a buyer or a seller of produce, I don't think there's a better place to start than retail.
I agree. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as to why you do that, why you'd say that. And I think those experiences, like I've ran limes before, I've ran bell peppers before,
Yeah.
being out there packing and stuff. You learn so much just by doing it yourself, and so many people don't do that. But if they get into the packing house and do it with everyone, I mean, you can learn so much and learn to appreciate how much work is put into our food to get it from one place to another. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
That's what
mind-boggling.
that's what I try to accomplish with some of my podcasts. I want people to understand, like, really what it takes to get that pepper to your table. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you just have no clue,
Yeah.
the people involved, how long it takes, how you take a seed and turn it into 90 days, 120 days later, turn it into a pepper, and, all the difficulties you could have along the way. And, and more importantly, why it's always the cheapest when it's the most beautiful and most expensive when it's the ugliest. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that is the antithesis of every other industry,
Yes.
and why nobody wants them when they're the most beautiful and everybody wants them when they're most ugly.
That's
Yeah.
gosh, I wish it was the other way around.
Yes.
I'll be
Yeah.
making a lot more money.
Yes.
But so you live in Mission, Texas, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you know
Yes.
I grew up there?
Yes.
I grew up there. My family's from there. I just think it's so funny. You're moving from New York, and of all the places you moved to Mission, Texas, do you like it?
I tell my wife, bury me in the backyard. I'm not moving no more. I made, but we have a house in Columbia. That's where I met my wife.
Nice.
I met, I'm thinking about trying to grow peppers there also.
Okay.
And then, maybe like do six, people don't realize Columbia in the summertime is cooler than where we live in Mission, Texas in the summertime. Columbia is is in the 90s, and here we could get to 110, 115. So I wouldn't mind living in Columbia for 6 months out of the year and miss those 6 months in Texas.
Don't blame you. I went home back in May, or I live in Missouri in the Ozarks, and I went back home in May, and it was 108, and I was, now being accustomed to the Missouri weather, it's like I couldn't handle it. It was just too hot.
Yeah.
So I don't blame you wanting to go to Columbia those 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
And it seems like Columbia is really developing. I know, like, they recently opened up Columbia for mangoes. It's very new. Limes are coming from there now. It's getting to be a bigger, player in the game. What do you see? What other opportunities do you see out of Columbia?
Well, I tell you the truth, the reason I originally went to Colombia was for mangoes, because
Okay.
I heard that they were sending it through Mexico, and Mexico was packing them. Again, this is like 14 years ago.
Okay.
And so when I went to Colombia, that was my thing. Like, let me see about these mangoes, and I tasted the avocado, and I was like, oh my God! And this was like they weren't allowed in this country back then. I said,
Right.
this is the play to make. It's not the mangoes, it's the avocado. And I was in the beginning, I was instrumental in trying to get them. But then in fact, the first 3 containers I sent here from Colombia, I sent the guy money. He actually, I don't know how he did it, or he has to be working with someone. He actually falsified the shipping documents, and I got robbed.
My goodness.
And you want to hear the worst part? I got robbed $22,000. Had he sent, because the deal was like, the better the market was, the more I was going to give the growers. Had he sent the avocados, that was the first time the avocado market hit $100. Had he sent them, he would have made a lot more than $22,000. A lot more.
Sure.
But, sometimes, a thief is a thief, so, they don't think about working.
Unfortunately, they get weeded out quickly.
Yeah. Well, this guy, it's amazing. I posted his pictures so many times, and he robbed people in Holland, Japan, all over Europe. He's at it now in blueberries because somebody called me like maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and he told me the company. I said, that's the guy. And I sent him the picture. I will tell you a funny story. For 3 years, I wanted to track him down because every time he robbed somebody, he would go on vacation. He was in France and Cancun and everything. So when we finally tracked him down, I sent a picture of his address to all the people he robbed. And he's still robbing people now with blueberries. So anybody out there with Columbia, if a guy hustles you Columbia blueberries and it sounds too good to be true, you better call me, and I'll let you know if it's the same guy.
Yeah, let's keep that guy out of business. For sure.
Yeah.
Anybody ask Paul Manfre about that, please? I guess so. One last thing. What message do you want to leave? I don't think you're going to retire anytime soon.
I'm not retiring.
No, I hope not.
I did 3 days after I die, 5 days if the market's hot. That's it.
But if you
He'll be like, Paulie's dead. Yeah, but he's got 6 loads coming to me, so I better. I want to plan my phone. I want to make after I die, I want to make phone calls to everybody. Like, what do you need today? You know what I mean? Like, that's good. That's on my bucket list. Okay, my message, and it's been my message for several years now. We all have to work on consumption because the consumption part of the equation is for all of us. A rising tide raises all boats. That has got to be our, and again, people think I only pick on retailers, but they should go back in history. I used to think the name of my report used to be the Alpha Omega Report. I wrote that. I started writing that about 35 years ago. And back then I used to go a lot against the growers because I knew when the market was fake and they were just holding stuff back in Mexico. So I used to go at them all the time. I go out to retailers right now because they're the consumption part of the equation. And I'm not saying that they have to give away the store, but when we have gluts, they need to react to those gluts because it's for the good of the whole industry. So anything we could do as an industry is beneficial to the industry.
Right.
So I would, perfect example, we don't advertise. Well, anybody ever hear of avocados from Mexico? Well, if you don't, just watch the Super Bowl this Sunday, and I'm sure they'll have 2 or 3 ads, and that's a perfect, or cuties, or, you know what I mean? Like, all the, you can promote produce. And how about, Walmart or Stop and Shop, or, how about them promoting produce also? You know what I mean? Like, advertise, or we just don't do it as an industry. And I really think if there was a message for everyone that everyone should get on board, it's consumption. We got to raise consumption in this country.
For sure. I think the tides are turning, though. I think people are more aware of their health than ever, and that conversation is just continuing to grow and grow.
Yeah. Amanda, we have the greatest story never told.
Exactly.
We have the greatest story never told.
Yeah.
We are so good for so many reasons, and nobody, like, come on, like I even said it during COVID. You have a captive audience now. You have to capitalize on it. But they just thought they were going to make, like, you remember how the prices stayed, even though the stuff was ridiculously cheap, retail stayed high because they just thought, oh, this is going to be like this forever. You know what I mean? That could have been their move. That could have been their move to keep that flow going, like to keep people buying fresh produce, it became affordable. But they missed that opportunity. Hopefully they won't miss the next one.
Hopefully not. Well,
yes.
I really appreciate your time today, Paul. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Yes, good. I'm glad you had a good time. I did. And
I love talking about produce.
I know, me too. Me too. And Importer Insight is we're starting off with fresh produce because obviously I've been around for a little while, but we're open to, all kinds of importers. So, pass on the word.
I
And
will.
thank you so much again for your time. And, if follow Red Pepper King on Instagram, right? And
Instagram, LinkedIn, and redpepperking.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Bye-bye.
Bye.